One. There it is. We're live. So everybody, welcome back. We're having a special emergency tea time tonight with the Let's Save Mama herself, Miss Tamara
Hello.
Rubin. I cannot thank you enough for coming on live. When your test results started dropping today, so did everybody's jaw.
And I can't I type 100 words a minute, and I really want to have all of this stuff published right away, but I try and make sure that there's the scientific background up online to give context. So for me, the most important thing was this little post I published, which you shared about, which was just really to talk about the science and the law behind it that's relevant.
Yes.
And I had posted on Reddit that I'm going to post a bunch more test results, but then my husband edits for me, so he had to edit that. So and now I just now threw up 6 more test results, just so we've had some of that to reference for people seeing this now. And then I will put all of the rest of them up over tonight and tomorrow, and I'll show the ones I have for you. I want to, like, this lady sent them to me, like 2 people. I'm looking for their names, but I don't know if I should say their names because I don't know if you
Well,
know.
I feel like if she comes on tonight and says, "Hey, sure, say my name," that'd be great. But I didn't know who it was either, and I'm like, if you were the person that sent it in, thank you so much on behalf of everybody.
Great. I
And
just want to share.
if you what, I mean, we're happy to give you credit for it. Just let us know if it's you.
This is all kids pieces. This is like 35 kids pieces that she sent.
Wow.
And yeah, and then somebody else sent me another 5. So I think I have a total of 40 right now. Maybe it's so and they're all testing bad. So should we dive in? Should we dive in to this?
Yes,
Or
and you guys, scrolling across the bottom is tamararubin.com. That's Let's Save Mama's website. All of her stuff is published up there, so we don't have to worry about like holding anything up for you all to see. We're just going to let her talk to us about what she found. And oh my gosh, thank you for doing this so much.
Well, it's funny because the way I work is, and I've been doing, my children were poisoned in 2005. And I started learning about lead in consumer goods and lead in housing. Okay, my disabled child is standing right next to me making faces. Do you want to say hi on the camera, you monkey? Say hi. He's just trying to cause trouble. Say hi. Okay, now you.
Hello!
It's Charlie. He's a little bit goofy sometimes. Anyway, okay. Bye bye, Charlie.
He's also a star because I saw your movie.
Oh yeah. So what I was going to say is I've been doing this for a long time. I started consumer goods testing in 2009, and the way I work it's reader driven. So I had over 1 million readers in 2019, and it's been pretty steady since then. From all over the world, and I'm 52. I'm an old lady, so I don't know what anybody wants to test. So my readers just send me stuff. And so this one reader sent me these couple of paparazzi jewelry pieces. I'm like, this is kind of boring. I don't know. I'll test this eventually. and then I tested it, and that was 2 years ago. And then, then Savannah Marie did the lovely video about my work, and then I didn't even know who she was. I didn't know about the anti-MLM movement, but it's really interesting to me because if you go to my website, a lot of the lead I found in consumer goods that my readers have asked me to test has been MLM stuff, like
Uh
Young
huh.
Living and doTERRA and Tupperware and I don't know, other things. So it's just coincidental that that's what people want to see tested. And so the way it works is people send me things to test. And if they contribute and want them sent back, I send them back to them right away, and I try and test them really quickly. And then other people, like, they send me lots of things that I say, oh, just keep it, and I get to them when I can. but I knew this. I knew after all this stuff over the last couple of months that this paparazzi stuff was important. So I've just been cranking through some of my writing and decided that this would be a good thing to get up ASAP, especially since like you were just mentioning, this is the kids' jewelry, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and here's so what I do is I do the consumer goods testing myself using X-ray fluorescence spectrometer technology, and I'm trained and certified in using the instrument. I use a $30,000 instrument that has software specifically for testing consumer goods. It's not an instrument that a house inspector would use to test for lead in paint, and those are about $10,000 or $15,000. And so my instrument is it not just tests for lead, it tests for all the metals, most of the metals. So it can find lead, cadmium, mercury, arsenic, platinum, gold, anything that's a metal, a common metal, it manages to find. It also looks for alloys like stainless steel and things like that. So there are standards. So when I write about what I test, I share the test results, and I try and share the legislatively relevant stuff about those items. And the main thing I share in pretty much all of my posts is that there's no regulatory standard limiting the amount of toxicants, heavy metals, that are present in items manufactured and sold for use by adults.
Right.
So that's like the underlying problem. All of the legislation is only aimed at items intended for use by children, which is good. You know, it's a start if people comply, but they don't comply most of the time. And so then we have jewelry that's intended for use by adults that's high cadmium, high lead, and it's not illegal necessarily. Well, this all changed in 2020 in the state of California because they're ahead of the curve on all this. And they set new limits for lead in jewelry intended for use by adults, as well as new limits for lead in jewelry used by children, which was already there's already a federal standard limiting cadmium in jewelry for use by children to 300 parts per million. And the overarching numbers that I use are 90 parts per million for lead, because that's what it should be for everything. But the law is that if it's an item intended for use by children, with some exceptions like jewelry and leather and different things, it has to be below 90 parts per million in the paint glazer coating. So on an item like this, the paint glazer coating is the enamel in the Christmas tree, right?
Okay, right.
And it has to be under 100 parts per million in the substrate. And in an item like this, the substrate is the base metal of the Christmas tree. Whoops, there's the
Yep,
so
that makes sense. That makes sense.
that has to be under 100 parts per million. So I use the most restrictive number in most of my posts, which is the 90 parts per million number. And then there isn't federal limits for most consumer goods about cadmium presence. So except for this new legislation in California is a little more strict about the presence of cadmium. They test both for total cadmium at a limit of 300 parts per million, which is the XRF detectable cadmium. And then they test for migratable cadmium at, I believe it's 75 parts per million or something like that. And then the other laws that are relevant, the state of Washington has limits that are equally strict. And to my knowledge, the state of Washington is the only state that considers dishes to be an item intended for use by children. So Washington regulates toxicants in dishware, but most other places don't. So all of that's just background. So the most interesting part, I lost a Christmas tree. The most interesting part about this is that really interesting, because you're a lawyer, so you know about people trying to evade the law,
Right.
which they do. So I'll put this up here. I don't know if you, so this statement on the back of all these says intended for 14 years and up. Okay, so this is the most interesting piece of information here. So most of the federal legislation considers children to be under 6. A lot of it in the past, some of the state legislation is children under 6. Some of the legislation goes for children up to age 12. Some of it goes for children up to age 14. So they were trying to be inclusive of any legislation that regulated toxicant content by specifically marking these as intended for children 14 years and up, which is really great. It's really great that it says 14 years and up, because usually they say below 14 or below 12, under 12, not for children under 3, right? So this says 14 years and up. So these are supposed to be used by 14-year-old girls, or boys, whatever, who's ever wearing them. So the new California law redefined a child to someone 15 years old and under.
Did they?
Yes, and that's the most. I have goosebumps telling you this.
I love that.
Yeah, so that's the most exciting thing. Paparazzi fucking breaking the law in California, and I'm sorry for my French.
We're a fuck-friendly program, so feel free to drop your bomb, baby.
So I was so excited to read this, and I hadn't actually read this new legislation, but the reason I did it is because these 30 items were sent to me by a former paparazzi dealer in California. And I was like, I wonder what the California laws are. I knew they had changed, but jewelry's interesting, but I test everything. I test dishes, I test appliances, I test vibrators, I test, you name it, I'll test it. You send it to me, I'll test it as long as it's clean.
Right. Like, please send me the clean items, friends. Yeah.
And that's the other thing that I love about this. In that this woman who sent me all of these children's items, they're all in the original packaging. So one of the before the camera started rolling, we talked about how in this kind of advocacy work, you get a lot of blowback from critics. And a lot of people say, well, they got contaminated in the house, or they were contaminated from the husband doing welding. I'm like, no, these are not contaminated. I mean, you say no, they were not contaminated anyway, but at the levels that we're finding, they're not contaminated anyway. But these are in their sealed packaging, which is awesome. And I like to have that as a place whenever possible to get new in box product to test, because then when you're challenging big companies, they can't argue that. So, any questions yet from you, Tracy?
You know what? So, one of the questions somebody asked earlier was, um, do you how when you get your test results, what do you do to record them? So I know I watched your movie, but I don't think everybody else has had the option to do that, right? Because it's not quite out yet, and I got a preview. So can you explain how you how you take the test? What do you do with the test results if there's a way to record them? Because a lot of people are using the test results that show they're not nickel and lead free to challenge their purchases with their credit card companies for misleading advertising and fraud. So,
Yeah.
is there, do you have like an official report, or how do you report this stuff?
I so what I do is I use my X-ray fluorescence spectrometer, and I test the items, and then I transcribe it onto my website. That's my report.
Okay.
And the reason I do it that way is I'm not a lab. I might, I'm, a low income mom of disabled kids in Oregon who happens to be one of the world's top experts on lead and consumer goods.
Yeah, it's amazing. Your journey is amazing. And I know that like tonight we're focused on this thing, but I really do hope that your story gets released soon. I hope your movie comes out, because your story is, it's heartbreaking, but it's amazing what you've done for the rest of the world to try to help not have happen to their families what happened to yours. You're I have chills on my arms. That was a that is a crazy journey. Your story is a crazy one.
And then the last 6 years have been even crazier, and who knows what's going to happen with that. I'm right now suing the state of Oregon in federal court for multiple counts of civil rights violations against me around work that around stuff that happened that basically attempted to destroy my advocacy work in a lot of ways. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But what I was going to say is I'm not a lab, but hopefully, someday I'll have enough funding for my business, which is Let's Save Mama LLC, to actually become a lab or have an arm of my business that is a lab. But because
That would be awesome.
yeah, and that requires funding, right? So because I'm not a lab, that doesn't mean my tests are any less valid. They're 100% valid. They're replicable. I repeat the test multiple times to confirm the results, and I do one full set of test results that I report on the website, and that's the only location that information lives.
Okay.
And then because my costs are low, in order to be able to do that, since I don't have to send everything to a lab for certification, I can test thousands of things. So I have over 3,100 posts and pages with test results on my website right now. And the other benefit of that makes it so this information can be free and available to the public if they want to go look it up on my website. And so that's why I do it in that way. Although, like I said, funding down the line, it'd be great to have a lead safe mama labs, and like to be able to test people's supplements. Everyone wants me to test their supplements, and to test people's, I don't know, whatever, their makeup, like the makeup questions and those different
Right.
makeup things. So in the meantime, the easiest thing to test is consumer goods that are made of metal. That's like the easiest, quickest thing to test. And so it only takes a very short time to test them. But then, like I said, I like to make sure the posts on my website have all the context. For example, if you go to the homepage of letsavemama.com today,
Yes.
it's the same as tamararubin.com, you'll see this Williams Sonoma dish.
Well, yeah, I read that today.
Yeah, so did the quality control people at Williams Sonoma. So I got an email this morning from Williams Sonoma, and I know that my post is science-based, accurate, non-inflammatory, just like really, really straight science, and everything I say is true. Every sentence is true. Every sentence will hold up in court. So when Williams Sonoma emailed me, I really wasn't afraid that they're going to like try and sue me. Instead, I had a civil conversation with them and said, hey, this is great that you guys want to do something. And they're like, but your test results are different than our test results. I'm like, that's because you're doing migratory testing. You're doing leach testing to see what comes off. You're not doing total content testing. And they're like, but we follow FDA standards. I'm like, yeah, that's not good enough. Regulatory standards imposed by our federal government are never good enough. And that's why we can't rely on that. That's why we need this word of mouth, talking to other parents about these things in our homes to share this information and hopefully share science-based, factual, replicable information so that conversations can be had in the realm of fact and not in speculation.
Exactly.
And so the Williams-Sonoma thing was, and I'm going to publish a little bit later today, the whole thread. I think we had 3 different emails back and forth. So I had like 6 emails to publish about the Williams-Sonoma conversation. And now they're actually looking into why there's lead in their dishes. They didn't think there was, but it's like 15,000 parts per million. And so the other thing that's on my homepage right now is the Pure US certified foam crib mattress. It's a Graco crib mattress that has antimony at levels that are considered illegal in the state of California and cause SIDS. So I also had to spend a week writing that post to make sure the science is good. Anyway, so the point behind all that is like I try and crank out the test results, but I want to make sure they're linked to posts that have all of the science so that I can't be sued. Because and companies always threaten to sue me, and they never follow through because science.
Yeah, because that little hiccup of actual fact that stops them from proving a slander case.
Yeah. Last year was Tea Bloom. They were selling these teapots and selling them as lead-free, and it has lead-free all over their website, lead-free all over the packaging. And I didn't know who they were. Somebody wanted me to test one, so I like, oh, this is cool. I'll test it. And I found lead, and I did a little YouTube video, a dinky little 2-minute YouTube video talking about the lead in the Tea Bloom lead-free teapot. And then the owner of Tea Bloom wrote me a letter from his lawyer, a cease and desist lawyer, which I then published on my website. And then he like looked into the issue, and then he apologized, and he called me, and he contributed in support of my work. So, comes around. And he changed all his his teapots to be lead-free. So,
now that's what we would have hoped that paparazzi would do, but instead they just took nickel and lead free off their website and stopped selling kids' jewelry 2 weeks ago.
So my first thought when sharing about, when doing this testing, I'm just trying to give some,
There it is.
Testing, I'm like, okay, these are obviously meant for little girls. I mean, there's or little boys, like anybody. They're meant for kids.
But small fingers, right?
Small fingers, sparkly thing in the middle. I mean, I have pretty small fingers. Let's see. I have tiny fingers, and I can't even get this on my ring finger. I know they stretch, but as it's set, they're smaller than my tiny fingers. So I think I have like a size 5 ring.
Oh my God, that is tiny. My ring size is 10. So that, in relative terms, is like the smallest adult ring standard size that you can buy in a jewelry store is a 5. So clearly, these rings that don't fit Tamara's finger, that is a size 5. Are not intended for children under the age or over the age of 14. Come on.
Right. Because a 14-year-old child is adult size. You're all the way grown. And, that's important too. I mean, I have been the same size except for an added 100 so pounds since I was about 15 years old.
We won't talk about that.
So that's why what I was going to say is paparazzi covered their ass by their 14 and under statement. This is not intended for children under 14. And it's on every single thing. It is. But now they're fucked as of June 1st, 2020 for anything they sold in the state of California that has this label, because these are obviously intended for children. That's the intent to sell for children. And they far exceed the levels that are the limits for California jewelry for lead and cadmium, total content levels by component. Now, that's another thing I want to, the testing you had done was XRF testing too, right? Okay. Right, Tracy? The testing you did?
We had dissolution testing done.
Okay. Oh, okay, good. So here, I just want to show you. So when I test, the XRF window is about the size of a dime, which is the same size as this.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting I'm getting this crystal in the reading. I'm getting the enamel in the reading. And I'm also getting the fact that edge is a silver metal in the reading. So my test came out, what did it come out on these? You read it earlier, but like high.
Yeah, it was like 118,900 for lead and 143,000 for cadmium.
Yeah, so the limits for lead, let's see, did you read the limits earlier too?
Yeah. So for kids, it was 100
Yeah,
parts per million.
and it's per component, and that's the thing that's important, is that the enamel is one component, the gem is another component, and the back metal is a third component, and then the back plastic thing is a fourth component, and the back, the what do you call this, the part that goes in your ear, but the stem or whatever, that's
Yeah.
a fifth component. So each of these components are like different coatings, different elements, and each of them is regulated on its own. So
Okay.
what I can't tell you is the lead in the enamel or is it in the gem? Well, I think it's in the enamel, but I'm not for sure certain, because some of these other ones I tested had gems but didn't have a lead reading, and but also some of the ones I tested had enamel and didn't have a lead reading. So it's really hard to know. Maybe it's just in certain colors of the enamel.
Right.
So yeah, but before I tell you the readings on these few items right here, for starters, do you have any other questions?
People did ask if your movie is going to be available soon.
Well, so it's always like, I've been trying to finish it for a really long time, but all my money goes to lawyers for my business. So
I think you ought to slap it up on YouTube because I think it looks pretty awesome and pretty finished. But I don't know what you feel like. If you feel like there's something big missing out of it that you want to put in there, I get it. But I thought it was great and it was totally done. But
thank you. Well, I had it up on YouTube and I had about 35,000 views on it. But this year I have two prospective major sponsors who wanted to finish. It's all technical, like picture finishing, sound finishing, color finishing. Like things that you wouldn't notice unless you were in a movie theater necessarily. Final credits, um, final animations and things like that. So it's all mostly technical stuff, and so we're looking for someone to finish all of that and then do like a Netflix or Amazon release if we can.
oh, that
If
would be awesome.
Yeah, so I have a couple of prospective people who have money and are in film and are maybe interested in finishing it, which is why I took it down from YouTube. Because when people see it on YouTube, they're like, "Oh, that's a nice video." I'm like, "No, it's a documentary film,
How
a
dare you? Yeah.
video."
It is a documentary, ma'am and sir. Yes.
So that's why it's not up. But if people want, they can join my Facebook group, which is Lead Poisoning Prevention with Lead Safe Mama, and there's a preview screener link pinned at the top of the Facebook.
I am a member. That's how I knew your stuff came out. That and Courtney DeWitt, the MLM police, she alerted us today, like that you were going to drop your stuff on your Reddit groups. I joined Reddit today, and I don't even know what I'm doing, but I was like, it's in there.
Yeah. And so we decided so we're both old ladies. Sorry, I don't,
Yes, I am, ma'am. Yes, I am.
And we're new to Reddit, so we need your help on Reddit getting to Reddit credibility, which is karma. And so the way you do that is join us and do a little up arrow
on push the arrow, yes,
on every single thing we post, so that we can increase our Reddit karma, so that we'll have more credibility when we share about what we're doing in different groups. For example, like if you shared in a different jewelry group that wasn't an anti-MLM group,
exactly.
You want to have the credibility that you're a real person. And apparently Redditors don't believe you're a real person unless you have like over 1,000 Reddit karma in all the categories.
Okay, well, I mean, they're like, you got it's trial by fire. Like, I understand, we got to run the gamut. It's like hazing. It's Reddit right. Hazing. Okay.
Yeah. So this weekend, you and I, right, Sunday, we're going to do a Reddit AMA on
yes, ma'am.
I have a Lead Safe Mamas like channel or group or whatever it's called, and we'll do an AMA that is focused on the paparazzi. And like I said, I type 100 words a minute. I'll answer questions, you answer questions, but we're asking our readers to like everything we post, so we
heck yes.
Anyway, so yeah, I posted on Reddit. I posted in my Facebook group, and yeah. I see you put up this question. How long, rough estimate, does it take Tamara to test one piece of jewelry with 5 components? Well, it depends on the jewelry. If it's like most of these pieces have more than 5 components, like this one doesn't, but the bigger ones, I don't know, I've got these aren't good examples, but some of the bigger pieces have so many different beads. Like it would take me a week because what I do is I test multiple times each component. I do longer tests. If I'm uncertain of the metals found, I'll redo the test and recalibrate the instrument because again, I want my test results to be reproducible in a lab, which they are, essentially. And but I mean, like really, I can give you a test of this in a couple minutes. But for me to write it up and report on it and again do all the other stuff,
Right. That's the part that takes the time.
Right. And I have to, like I said earlier, I have to do it so that I protect myself from liability, so that the statements are primarily factual and all standalone, so people can't take a statement out of context.
Okay, so I read them the results from the pink flower earrings.
Okay.
But I know since the original ones came out, you have popped way more up.
I just put up 6 just in time for just now. And again, this post, it says there's nothing, there's not a lot of information on it. I just put the test results and I put a link at the top. I hope I made it live.
It's live. I see it. Yep. I got it.
Hold on one second. I'm scrolling down so I can read the, so I have, so I said, please read this post for context. So I will update the full post. So this little ring is 127,000 parts per million lead and 63,000 parts per million cadmium. And the butterfly ring didn't have any lead, which is weird. It makes me think maybe it's not the crystals and maybe it's just the different colors of enamel. And the cadmium was 211,800. But again, in the overview post that I posted earlier, if I take off the ring back and I test just this part flat, I bet you I'll get a much higher level, probably in the 300 to 400,000 cadmium. That's just a speculation, because this way I'm testing through this enamel and it's not lead, but it dilutes the reading. So the cadmium reading is artificially low at only 211,000.
Yeah, seriously, because it's supposed to be under 100 people, like under 100.
Under 300 total content for, and then these little witchy earrings, they are 336,000 parts per million cadmium. And then this is the one I shared about earlier, which is 119,000 lead and 143,000 cadmium. And so again, what I was saying is that the back is, the cadmium reading is probably artificially low. It's probably really 300,000. What I need to do, and I haven't done, is I'll just need to, break off the little stem. I can't test it with the stem on the back.
Right, because it doesn't, your thing won't,
Yeah, but my husband can cut that off and I can test the back of the flower and we'll have a better total cadmium content number that'll probably match lab testing. And then these little presents, Christmas presents, 10,300 lead and 423,000 cadmium. And again, these are violating the law in California. And the only reason they're violating the law in California is because of this printed statement on the back. And the question is, were they selling them with this printed statement on the back in 2020 after June 1, 2020?
I have earrings that I don't know. I have earrings that look like that were sold before then, because I was no longer a consultant on the date that law changed. So I am not the best person to answer that question. Like, I had stuff that looked like that, but I don't know how these fell in their stream. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how old these pieces are.
And so the last one I put up is the Christmas trees, 385,000 cadmium and no lead. And there's like a bunch of different colors of, there's green, red, and white enamel, which makes me think it's like the light pink enamel is leaded, but there's really no way. And
I was going to say, because the Christmas holly presents are white, red, and green too, and they did not detect. So that's what's weird, right?
Well, no, oh yeah, these are the same colors. And so then maybe there are leaded crystals and not leaded crystals. And so that's why, okay, yeah, you can do digestive testing and have them take apart each color and have them take apart each crystal. But really, it doesn't matter when you're getting total content levels with an XRF this high. There has to be something in there that's at least this high to have those test results. So it's alarming. Yes, I have jewelry from December with that. So this December.
December 2020, Megan?
21.
21, sorry.
or 2020. Oh wait, no, yeah, December
Yeah,
2020 would
because
make
it's
sense.
changed. It said June 2020 that the law
Right.
changed. So yeah.
So, and I guess here's the problem, and please don't take this wrong, but I want to help all of you, right? The problem is, and this is a terrible, terrible problem, that when people have gone after state of California violations for heavy metals, because it's hard to go after the manufacturer, because it's hard to prove that the manufacturer knew that the product would be sold in California. Like, even if you live in California, the manufacturer will say, I didn't know you were going to sell them in California. I shipped them to you in California, but I didn't know you were going to sell them there. Anyway, and because I think a lot of these are sold by cash, people pay cash for these, or yeah. So because of those things, what lawyers have done, those terrible lawyers, is they've gone after this person who sells.
Yeah.
So, and that's how they've gotten groundbreaking cases passed, by going after store owners, and in this case, it'd be going after paparazzi sellers. And
Which
that's
is
my
why we're telling people don't sell it anymore, because now you know.
Yeah, especially anything that looks like a children's item, because that's one of the stipulations of that new law, is that if it looks like it was sized for or intended for, or if in any way marketed for it. Now, the other problem too is I was, excuse me, made aware of all of these paparazzi websites that, and Facebook channels where they're showing these on their kids and saying how cute they are on their kids, and like they're actually breaking the law, and they don't know it, and it's not their fault, but
Right. And that's
they
what's scary.
they need to take those videos down now, because any video of their kid wearing them that could be construed by a regulatory agency as them selling for use by children, even if it's just by association, and you're not saying buy these for kids, you're saying isn't my kid cute in these earrings, that's still selling for children and would be considered illegal. And I haven't looked into what the fines for breaking this law are, but anyway, it's concerning.
And that's why this discussion is so important, not just because paparazzi is selling jewelry that violates the standards, but that it's probably going to be the individual consultants who are selling it to end users who are potentially going to be in the line of fire. And that's why I was so very grateful that you would come on tonight. Because this is it, I can tell people till I'm blue in the face, right? But they don't necessarily believe me. Liability issues for actual consultants who are selling this jewelry out of their own homes, it's a real thing, because this children's jewelry is not available on a replicated website. Other paparazzi products available on a replicated website, so it would be paparazzi potentially mailing it, not just the consultant sending it to somebody individually. But the children's jewelry is only available to consultants to buy at wholesale in their back office. They are the distributors.
And it doesn't matter who you sell this to. You can sell this to an adult, but because of this label that clearly states it's available and for use for 14 and 15-year-old children, it's a violation. That's
And I think that's a real subtlety.
Yeah, it's very subtle, but it's the most enforceable thing about this entire case, and that's why I was so happy to read that.
That is what is the freaking bomb that just blew up. Okay, now we've had a whole nother question, and this is partially my fault, right? Because the reason that you were brought, that we were brought to your attention is because we were trying to do home testing. And this is the question that said, if we can do these tests at home, why do we need to do the lab testing? What's the difference between the level of credibility? Asking so I can have accurate information. Could you please tell us, Tamara, what was wrong with the home testing?
Hold on, you're gonna have to see my butt for you.
Among others, tried to do.
All right.
She's gone off to get visual aids. She's like, listen.
So the thing is, I have an office in my home. What I do is not home testing. I test at home, but what I do is not home testing. I am also trained and certified in using the scientific instrumentation that I use, that if you bought the brand new instruments, about $50,000. And I'm arguably the only one in the world who has the knowledge base that of the comprehensive knowledge base about toxicants found in consumer goods. Most people, they might know about this kind of consumer good or that kind of, but I've tested so many things. And I've won 2 awards from the federal government for my advocacy work. They were presented to me by HUD and EPA, CDC, USDA, U.S. Department of Energy. And I give talks. Like the EPA has had me come and do talks at their headquarters to teach EPA employees about the impacts of lead exposure. So I'm not just a person in my home. I'm a person who has dedicated my life to this and is recognized as a citizen expert on this topic. And so the other thing about that is I don't have a degree in science, but I've been doing this long enough that I, have a de facto degree in science in terms of the science that I understand and I share about. And a lot of scientists hire me. Like I work for NASA scientists. I worked for some lawyers who've hired me. A lot of people in math and science and related fields hire me to test things. So they see my work as legitimate, which I think is super fun when I go to work for NASA scientists. I've done that.
Cool, right?
Thank you. Let's Save Mama is Latin for badass.
Right? I had to put that up. I need to appreciate it.
So I really anyway, so I do this at home, and the biggest criticism people like to say is, oh, she's just doing a home test kit and she works out of her home and she's just a mom. And you want to make it really, really profound in terms of the criticism, because I was saying how, we have to develop a thick skin. I don't have a science degree and I went to clown school. So so I have a degree in mask and clown work from New York University. I studied theater with the Théâtre du Soleil in Paris and Commedia dell'arte, and that's my background.
You happen to be the second person I've met who is a professional clown. We have in our little area of northern Kentucky the Circus Mojo, which is run by a husband and wife team who are professional clowns and moved back to here because it was their hometown, and they now have a small community. It's not that small, actually. It's pretty well respected. Like clown school, and my kids have gone there for summer camps, and it is they can all spin plates on a stick, and they got to doing the silk work. They did a lot of fun stuff, and it was one of the most fun things they ever did. So that is, I know, totally random and off subject, but I'm like, you're the second clown I've met.
There you go. And so, but the thing is, you can't make a living being a clown, although my children are amazing. They're doing clown and music stuff and they're making a living. But so what I ended up doing was I ended up doing arts administration and database design. And then I was a consultant for Apple for a decade. And so I had, and that's what I did. I did database design for Kaiser Permanente, for Starbucks, for Nike. I forget. There's some others. But I ended up. I'm a math head too. So I'm that's my area of my skill set is analyzing data and doing database development. And so when my kids were poisoned, I wanted to quantify and identify the scope of this issue. And that's when I decided I found out about the XRF instrument and I got trained and certified. So this is an XRF instrument. And again, this particular instrument is like a $30,000 instrument. It's a non-radioactive source instrument that does consumer goods testing. It looks exactly like the $10,000 or $15,000 instrument you can buy on eBay that's radioactive source and used for paint testing. That's not this instrument. The software and the interior hardware is totally different. It's just the casing that looks the same. So you can't test consumer goods without this.
Okay.
Right. So now the reactive agent home test kits are particularly awful. I have some here. I don't know where I put them. But
we were so proud of ourselves too. Like we were so proud. We were like, yeah, it was bad.
So there's two kinds of reactive agent home test kits. There's the 3M ones, which are really great. I met the woman who invented them and sold the company to 3M. And when she sold the company to 3M, they said, hey, who do we need to know about in the world of this testing? And they said, you got to stay in touch with Tamara Rubin because she increased our sales by like 1,000% in 1 year because I love the product for testing paint. It's good for testing paint. It was designed by the woman who made them for testing paint. It tests for lead in paint accurately. It tests for lead in paint down to 600 parts per million, which is the low threshold of detection, which is amazing. And 600 parts per million was the detection level that she wanted them to test at because the 1978 law outlawing lead in paint made the restriction being that lead in paint had to be no more than 600 parts per million.
Okay.
So these would turn red if it was over the new legislative limit for lead and paint. So they're great for testing for lead and paint. They are not designed to test for lead in consumer goods already. Those are the 3M ones. Then there's these knockoff ones that come in a little tube and a little stick, and you have to mix them with vinegar or whatever. And
Yeah.
oh my God, like those are just garbage. They're like they should be illegal. They not only they might occasionally test positive on lead and paint randomly, but they mostly give false positives on metal substrates that are not lead, like zinc and cadmium, and even other things that aren't lead. They just give false positives, and they're not a real thing. They're just there's Chinese knockoffs. They're a Chinese knockoff, maybe not from China, but I don't know. But they're just a knockoff of the 3M technology. And people think they can use them for consumer goods because it says that they can, but they can't. And also, the other reason you can't use the 3M test for consumer goods is because the low threshold of detection is 600 parts per million, and the amount of lead that's considered unsafe in an item intended for use by children is 90 parts per million. So it doesn't go down to the level of sensitivity. So even if
Okay.
the lead, it's not sensitive enough. So and then that's irrelevant because we're also finding mercury and arsenic and antimony and cadmium, and there's no home test for all of those things.
Right.
So that's why it's kind of weird what I do. I normally charge people. It's not a charge for service. It's more what I call it is my business is a unique community collaborative environmental advocacy organization. So people will like pay me $35 to test an item like this, and then I'll report it on my website, and that helps me cover the cost of the XRF instrument.
Right.
I had to borrow $15,500 to do repairs on my instruments, and I'm still waiting for those instruments back from the factory. This is a loaner instrument that I had to actually rent from the company for $1,700. So this isn't without cost, even though I own instruments. I still don't have the ones I own fixed and back in my hands. So the point being, the contributions help cover the costs of the test. And then the most important piece of it is that the information is available for free on my website, because I want that to be a space where people can come and look stuff up. And I'm just going to say, like, for those of you who are just tuning in or don't know me, I'm rambling. I'm looking at the time, 41 minutes.
You're not rambling. You're actually giving an incredible amount of information. Really, I promise.
So my we all have hills that we're not willing to die on and hills we are willing to die on. And this is one of my hills that I'm willing to die on, but I can't. So recently with the pandemic, Facebook has essentially been censoring health-related information, because that's what they started doing. So I used to get 20,000 page views a day before the pandemic on my website. 20,000 page views a day generates enough income from advertising for me to pay for the work that I do. Right. And then when the pandemic hit, now I'm down to like 5, 6, 7,000 views a day. On good days, maybe 8 or 9,000. And that's because Facebook's not sharing my posts to the readership. And so that's one of the reasons I decided to go on Reddit as well. But anyway, so one way I know this is happening is at the end of this year, I found 7 different baby bottles. We recognize the baby bottle brand.
Oh yeah, Nook.
7 different baby bottles, and they're on my website and here's another one. They all tested positive. These baby bottles are all painted with lead paint. And I have written the Consumer Product Safety Commission. I've talked to the New York Times. I've written to CBS. I have posted it on Facebook, and then nobody notices, and it doesn't get shared, and nobody sees it. These are lead fucking painted baby bottles, and no one gives a flying F about the fact. And I have a friend who's amazing. She's the former director of the Consumer Product Safety Commission under the Clinton administration. She's really cool. Her name's Pamela. She has a really neat Wikipedia page of Pamela Gilbert. And she asked me to put together a neutral, non-emotional, very science-based summary article, which I did. And I stripped the advertising off that article so it would be very easy to read about all the 7 lead-painted baby bottles that I have found this year. And she sent it to the CPSC, the new administrators there. And she's the former director, so it has some weight, right? And they did nothing. No one's doing anything. So that's the problem. You have, lead in earrings and lead on baby bottles. No one cares. So it's up to us to care. It's us.
We care.
Yeah, it's up to us to spread the word. All cats, no gluten says, how do you keep yourself safe when handling testing all these things? I wash my hands. I know some people have kind of OCD over this, and I don't. I like on this. I wash my hands, but a baby's holding this every day.
Right.
When I do testing on really high toxic metal things, I make sure to wash my hands a lot, and I wash them before I eat, and I try not to worry about it. And I don't keep all this stuff in my home. I have a storage unit full of toxic stuff that people have given me. that
You're
I
like, man, that's the worst Christmas gifts ever.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. I got all this vintage Fisher Price stuff one year from a friend. I'm like, yes, this is
Do I
cool.
even want to know?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, so on my website, there's a video that comes up on the desktop mode, but you have to look for it. It's how to use the website. It's a video that says how to use this website. It's 16 minutes. Please watch it because there's over 3,100 posts. So you can look up everything. But if you watch the video, it shows you how. So there's lead-free dishes and lead-free jewelry and lead-free everything. All this, you
Yes.
can look for it. It's not all about lead. Not everything has lead, and that's the other crazy effing myth. That I think the paparazzi letter they're published, it said, well, everything has a little bit of. I'm like, no, not everything has a little
No,
bit
it doesn't. Jerks.
of. So there's lead-free options for everything, and there's lead in a lot of MLM stuff. Like I said, the Tupperware was a really big thing. The vintage Tupperware, lead, mercury, arsenic. One thing I do want to mention, since this is a lot of people who don't know me, is that I'm the only person I know who isn't a former president or other celebrity that has been written up in Snopes 4 times. And we're trying to get them to retract 2 of the articles, though, because they're total bullshit. And I even confronted the owner of Snopes, and I have a lot of posts about that. If anyone has questions about that, if you read the full summary of all the Snopes posts, and there's videos of me talking in a meeting with the owner where I confront him. But basically, in 2 of their articles, they said Tamara Rubin said this thing has lead or this thing's safe, so it's real, it's legitimate. And then in 2 of the articles, they tried to disparage my work. So in 2 of the articles, they consider me an expert, and 2 of the articles, they're disparaging my work. So it's very frustrating.
That
But
is frustrating.
yeah, and I'm trying. You're a lawyer. Maybe you can help me. I'm trying to. Can we send a letter to Snopes and ask them to retract that 2016 article because it's really damaging because people believe it, and that's when it's a problem.
Yeah, because that's basically libel.
It
But
is. Mm-hmm.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think that there's 2 reasons why the information that you have shared tonight is so that we need to hear this. The first one is because health issues, the stuff is over the top toxic. Like the levels are way above what would be considered a safe harbor.
Yeah.
But the other issue is that you're bringing to everyone's attention is their personal liability if they continue to sell these items into the public stream of commerce because the
Yeah.
person, the last point of contact transacting with an end user consumer, they're also going to be bought into the flow of liability if someone starts
They're
suing.
they're the first hit. And I know this because I've consulted with some law firms, and the law firms want me to, and I haven't done this really, but they want me to come up with a relationship where I have an address in California so that I can help them sue people. And I'm like, I don't need that. But but what they have told me, and I think 3 different law firms have told me this, that they do better in their lawsuits. They have better outcomes if they sue the small business owner versus the manufacturer across the board. And the small business owner generally has insurance, and I don't know how many paparazzi dealers have insurance.
Hardly any because they're home based businesses. They're just, your average mom's side hustle, your average dad's side hustle. And you cannot convince people to spend extra money when they're already not making money because it's notoriously not a money making business. It's a multi level marketing company.
Yeah.
And, only 1% of people in MLMs actually make any money. So these people don't spend extra cash to have that kind of liability insurance, and they're open to this liability from consumers. And I am so grateful for you coming on and making this point because we've been so focused on what the company has done. We have neglected to understand that we are part of the liability now.
Yeah,
as people who sold these products.
And you're the first first part because you're going to be easier to get to than paparazzi management. So one thing is similar. When you say you own a house that you inherited from your mom and it's a duplex and you rent out half of it and there's lead hazards, well, you automatically become a landlord, right? You're a landlord, even though this is only one property that you're renting. Well, you automatically become liable for knowing and complying with all landlord tenant law. And most people who are renting out one unit don't realize that, but they're liable for, in this is where it's parallel. They're liable for poisoning a child if a child gets poisoned, or for having a defective product if their home is unsafe, because they're in business. And you can say, oh well, it's on the side, or it's a small business, or I only have one, or whatever. But you are liable if you are in business, and you're liable for knowing all of the laws around your business, or at least trying to know them. So if you get audited or if you get investigated, you can prove that. And that's the interesting thing in the attacks on my advocacy work, is that I've shown my innocence over and over and over again with accounting and everything else that goes behind it. So they tried to shut me down, but they couldn't because I didn't do anything wrong. But if you don't have, if there's any evidence that you sold these after June of 2020, you are liable for having sold them in the
And
state of
y'all,
California.
it's February of 2022, right? That's why I mean, there's been a big gap in time where that liability exists.
What was that? I didn't see the question you put up.
Well,
Sorry.
let me read it. Stephanie said, as consumers, we make assumptions all the time that if a product is for sale, it's safe. You'd think the liability alone would force companies to ensure safety. Guess not. And I agree. That's why I thought it was a valid point, because we as consumers are assuming, we make a lot of assumptions, consumers assuming that if it's out in the store, it must be fine because obviously some government agency tests it. We have a huge government entity out there. Surely somebody's in charge of it.
Yeah, and the problem is actually whether or not these pieces of jewelry are safe or cause harm to human health is irrelevant. Because I think when we spoke on the phone that one time, you can't, right? We spoke on the phone. It's all a blur. You can't prove links to your health unless you have documentation showing that you were healthy in that way before and then not healthy in that way afterwards. And the only way, and I said this in my post with paparazzi's statement, I don't know when that was. When was that crazy statement that they put
It was
out?
like December.
Yeah, so when I first saw that, and I have a reader who shares all that stuff with me, I published a response saying why it was BS, and also what people should do. And so if you got a test, like a urine test or a hair test, that proved that you had cadmium in your hair or urine, you don't have one from beforehand to show that you didn't have it beforehand. So it won't hold up against the reasonable doubt argument in court. Now, if you have super long hair and you do one of those, and I don't know how expensive it would be, they do this for murder trials. I don't know. I mean, my hair is 3 feet long. If you can cut it up into inches and determine which inch is from what month, and
Right.
if there's no cadmium down at the bottom, but there's cadmium up at the top, then okay, maybe you can do that. It's really expensive.
But I
And
think
then
it's so extremely difficult and individual that if you have a short haircut, you're automatically screwed. Like it's we have talked to so many law firms that everybody, of course, there's law firms are happy to talk to you. They're happy to try to get a class action lawsuit because that's how they get paid.
oh yeah, there's
But the
no
medical
benefit to
claims are so
consumers.
tenuous.
Yeah, well, the consumers never win in a class action. The
Right.
class action is only to make the lawyers money and make the companies comply with the law, and that always doesn't always happen. So never
And
get involved.
the outcome is not going to matter if people start suing you for being a distributor.
Right.
There's the $4.75 you're going to get as a class action participant is not going to pay your legal fees when somebody knocks on your door and says you sold my daughter these crappy earrings, and by the way, here's your summons to court.
So, from a legal perspective, what we collectively should do here, and I don't ever sell anything like that, so it wouldn't be me, but I mean, the royal we. or not. That's not right, but I'm tired. Okay, it's
It's okay. We know. It's all right.
so you as distributors, you should post a notice that's pinned to the top of your page that you just found out that these are illegal for sale in the state of California and that you are no longer selling them and that you would like people to send them back to you for a full refund. And at least then you've done the most protective, most proactive thing that you can do to get these out of the hands of your customers. Anything that was in the children's jewelry and I mean, maybe there's one or two of these that are safe, but so far every single one of it has been positive. And like I said, I've got like 40 more, and I'm going to try and crank them out over the next day or two. I'm so you want to see the ones I have? I mean, for is that like a tease? I don't have all the results handy, so I don't even know what these are. This is little stars and
Earrings, yeah.
the little flowers. I'm
Oh my
sorry.
gosh.
I'm sure they're all the ones with the enamel and the crystal are all. Now this is a good one. This is a really good one. So this one came to me. It's an umbrella, and I think it was on this ring. And
Oh yeah. Probably.
so it came detached.
Oh, that
Uh,
happens a lot.
that's a swallowing risk,
I was going to
and
say there half this jewelry is a choking hazard, which is why they say it shouldn't be sold to anybody under 14, even though it's clearly sized for someone much younger than 14. But
yeah, and I can't even get that on my ring.
I had little bracelets I had given my nieces who were like 3 and 2 at the time. Their mom handed them back to me because they had disassembled them. They had unscrewed all the beads, screwed off, and I was like, oh my god, I just quit. You have to quit. Yeah.
Yeah, I would do that. I would make a little notice on your letterhead with your name, like in Canva, a nice little graphic with that statement that you are accepting refunds. You just found out that these are sold illegally in the state of California, and and outside of California, you still have federal laws limiting the amount of cadmium in children's jewelry to 300 parts per million, I believe. But it's not as strict as the California legislation, which also includes a migration concern. So you might just say federally, mention the California law, but say that in order to be in compliance with federal and California law, I just think you got to protect yourself at this point.
And I can tell you that Paparazzi Accessories will cancel any consultant that's active consultant that puts that up because they'll call it a disparaging remark.
Oh yeah, well you have to do it because otherwise the lawyers in California.
So what you have to decide is your side hustle worth getting sued over?
Yeah.
Because you probably don't have insurance protecting yourself.
Yeah.
And you probably don't have it in a limited liability company to protect your exposure to your personal assets. These are real issues. This is not fear mongering. This is not disparaging a company's, stance on how their consultants should conduct themselves. This is real talk. You've opened a business and you've exposed yourself to potential hazards by selling a product that does not meet consumer protection standards. This is a real question. I'm going to suggest to everybody that is a current consultant, a past consultant, people that are still selling the product, that you consult your attorneys, explain the situation, and ask for a recommendation for the laws in your state because you are exposed here. And that is not a joke.
Specifically ask about the language and the fact that it says, 14 years and up, and the California law, includes 14 and 15-year-olds. I think that's the most important point here.
I hope that the information that we have all given out tonight is. I hope you all listen. Like, I was blown away by the test results, but the implications of those test results are even more terrifying. The health risk is terrifying, but whether or not you are concerned about the health risk, maybe you don't believe any of this hurts anybody, and you're just not going to even jibe with the science of it. The law states that this product is sold illegally. Whether you believe that it's dangerous or not doesn't matter. The law states this product has been sold illegally, and if you are distributing it, you are liable.
only in the state of California, because only California included the age 15.
Exactly. But that's important because I know California is a huge area where distributors are located, and just putting up a disclaimer on your websites that say, your personal websites that say, this might contain lead and nickel, that's not enough.
Yeah, no, yeah, because it does contain lead and cadmium,
Right.
and it's yeah, I mean, that's separate. That's the false advertising claims, and
Yeah.
yeah, I hope paparazzi gets nailed for this. I mean, at first I thought they were lead and nickel free, but then all these other ones came up with lead, and then I found a couple that had higher levels of nickel. Most of them don't, but they're nickel free almost all, which is not anything. I mean, it
That's
really,
safe. That's very small comfort when it's full of lead and cadmium.
yeah. And so,
But at least it's nickel free.
so lead causes brain damage. My children have permanent brain damage from being lead poisoned as babies. My son's visual memory is in the 4th percentile, so he has to work around learning, and use auditory skills for learning. And he also doesn't. He has an autism diagnosis, but he doesn't have autism. He doesn't know how to read social cues and facial expressions and things like that, which is, you don't know how important that is until you don't have that skill or ability. And he's doing great, and I have to spend a lot of my time with him, helping him, teaching him, managing him, making sure he gets his homework done, dealing with his OCD and other issues that he has as a result of his lead exposure. Plus, he's medically fragile because um, lead is biomimics calcium in biological structures, and what that means is parts of your body that should have calcium instead have lead molecules, and you end up being it interrupts all biological functions. So he has an injectable biologic medicine that costs $10,000 a month that we even couldn't get his health insurance to cover, so we had to switch to health insurance that was much more expensive, and that turns off his immune system even more. And this is like stuff we deal with every day. And now he's 17, he's learning how to do his injections himself. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who have diabetes and deal with that already, but that's not something you want your 17-year-old to have to do every month for the rest of his life.
No, that's absolutely terrifying.
And then cadmium causes cancer. It's like not even a question. It's up there. It's on the causes cancer list, and it's really toxic. And when you look at the levels of breast cancer and other cancers that a lot of women have, you wonder. And there's all this speculation on where did it come from? Why is it women that are seeming to get cancer more in certain? There was speculation that it was from deodorant, which I think is probably still important to avoid the aluminum containing deodorants and other toxic chemicals putting right on your sensitive parts that will absorb into your bloodstream. But if you're wearing a cadmium containing necklace on a daily basis and it's up against your chest here, does that have any skin absorption issues? Who's going to do the science to find out? Not paparazzi. There are things that we don't have answers to because no one's done that science, but that doesn't mean that isn't potentially a problem. So, it's worth, like I said, get a hair test or a urine test from your doctor to see if you test positive for any of these metals. And then if you do, test again in a month or two after you haven't interacted with paparazzi jewelry at all and see if your levels have gone down. And they may or may not, but if they do, that would be
But do
useful.
it for your health. Don't do it for a potential lawsuit. Do it because it's dangerous for your health and you need to get this stuff out of your house and away from your body. Period.
Yeah. I don't really wear jewelry. I have a wedding ring somewhere here. I don't know where
You're
it
like,
is.
somewhere. I don't know. That dude knows where he belongs. He doesn't need a ring.
Yeah. And I'm a minimalist in that sort of way. I know that other people have other priorities, and things like jewelry and makeup are important to them. But for me, I was born in 1969, so I'm like a leftover hippie, funky. I can do without. I don't need any of that stuff. And I don't know. Maybe I'll die in 10 years at 62 of a massive heart attack. Who knows? But at least I made an effort to simplify my life and also don't have that expense for all
Right.
these things. I actually, what's that makeup one? Is it Arbonne or something? I don't know. One of the MLMs is a makeup one. I
Oh,
don't know
there's a
which one.
lot of makeup ones. There's Unique, there's Avon, there's Mary Kay, there's Pharmacy, there's Unique. Did I say Unique?
Than unique. Anyway,
Yeah.
one of my friends was doing that, and she did the whole makeup on me, and like, oh, look at your makeover, and I'm like, my skin is burning. Get this stuff off my face. Let's see
So,
how
yeah,
you want to read it. You read it.
sure. She said, please ask how we can test the quote unquote rubber backing on the earrings. They get hard and cannot be removed without instruments.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, they're probably not toxic. I would imagine. I think they're silicone.
Okay, so silicone. Okay.
But I might be wrong. But I can put a bunch of them in a baggie and test them because you need enough mass. So I can.
Okay.
I've got about 60 of them here, so I can do that.
And Nicole was asking about the testing. I don't know if you know about the testing.
The blood. Blood. So I have posts again about all of this on my website.
Yes, the website is so full of information, y'all. It is amazing.
And then it explains the examples in detail, and it shows you what some of those look like. So you can do a blood lead test, but lead and other chemicals and metals have a 30 to 45 day half-life in the blood. And that is theoretical. So theoretically, if you were exposed to lead on day one and you got tested the next day, and you removed yourself from the source of the lead and your blood level was a 64, then 30 days later it should be a 32, 30 days later it should be a 16, and 30 days later it should be an 8. And that's why we think Avi, my son, was likely a blood level 64 or even possibly 128 when he was poisoned. Avi, you want to say hi? Come say hi. Come say hi. He's so cute. You have to say, this is Avi. Come say hi. Just take your hat off. Get over here. Oh, he's so cute. I want to just say hi. Come here. Put your face in the screen.
He's like, Mom, why are you making me? Hi.
This is Avi.
You're a good sport. You did it anyway.
Anyway, Avi was a blood level 16 when we first got him tested, and we didn't test him until almost 3 months after he was poisoned. So he might have been as high as 128. Wow. So with that knowledge, you can get a blood test, but it's only going to show what your exposure was, and you don't know if it's a high or has it gone down. It's a snapshot, and you don't know what the window of the snapshot is because you don't have a before picture. But you could do a blood test now and then do another blood test in 2 months or 45 days and see if your blood level goes down. The thing is, if you have other exposures, like from your home, it won't go down. And still, that's a great reason to get a blood lead test.
Right. So, I mean, it's not just because of jewelry, y'all. Lead is dangerous, period. Yeah.
And, if you look on my website, I have a menu that has like all these different categories, pots and pans and dishes and coffee mugs and baby bottles. I test everything. And you can see examples of ones that are high lead and examples of ones that are also lead free. But the point of it is that most of us have some amount of exposure in our life. The most important piece of information, there's a study linked on my website about this, is that the average blood lead level of a woman of childbearing age, which is probably most of the people watching this, right, is 0.43. So, and that's from a study done in 2011. So it's probably gone down a little bit since then. But what Dr. Rubin learned and demonstrated in her study was even blood lead levels as low as 0.43 are associated with low birth weight in newborns and infertility and other impacts on pregnancy. Wow. So the problem is, and if you look, I have a menu at the top of my website, and if you click the lead testing thing, the first one is about testing blood. If you do get a blood lead test, you want to make sure that you ask for the most accurate test results possible. And you want to do that before you go into the doctor, because the doctor might say, oh, we only test down to a blood level of 3 micrograms per deciliter. You don't want to know if you're less than 3. You want to know, are you 0.5? Are you 0.2? And in order to get that accurate level of testing, you really need to often go to the hospital lab. If you're testing your children, you go to the children's hospital to get the most accurate test. And the only way you can know about that is by calling in advance, calling the lab, asking them what their low threshold of detection is. Because you want to know, having been exposed to these kinds of things or other contaminants, if your blood level of 0.5, because that might impact your pregnancy. I was one. I was above level 1 when I was pregnant with Charlie. And that's after my kids. So it was more than twice the national average. And they never tested me when my kids were poisoned. So I was probably much, much higher because I had the
Right.
same exposure as my kiddos. Yeah. And so with Charlie, he was my fourth birth, and I'd never had preeclampsia before, but I had significant, severe, advanced stage, undiagnosed preeclampsia, and I almost died in childbirth from kidney failure because no one diagnosed it, because you usually only have preeclampsia in a later pregnancy if you had it in an earlier pregnancy.
Right.
I've never had it before, but this was my only pregnancy after my lead exposure, and it turned out my lead level was more than twice the national average. So, and the low birth weight, he was 5 pounds 10 ounces, and he was 2 feet tall and 5 pounds 10 ounces. So he was really skinny and tiny and born early, and it was a stressful birth. And so that's just one example of the potential for the impacts of low level lead exposure. And so you want to know how low or how high your number is. You don't want to know a less than number. And one more for us. I know we're young. We're young. Now I'm like, we're old. We're young. When you hit menopause, which I'm not there yet. I'm almost there. I don't know. But yeah, you have cellular turnover in your bones. So what happens is your bones that absorb lead from the air, from the leaded gasoline from when we were children, from the leaded paint on homes, from the renovations in the cities, from any of our lead experiences that we've had, when we hit menopause, we have enough cellular turnover that releases the lead into our bloodstreams. So women,
Oh shit.
yeah. So you might say, it was a paparazzi jewelry, but if you're of a certain age, well, it could just be that you are menopausal or postmenopausal. It's not fun. It's a big topic.
Well, Tamara, this was, and I'm not trying to be dramatic. This was really kind of life changing information. If people think about all the information we've delivered to them today, I
Yeah.
hope they stop and take it in, because I don't sell the jewelry anymore. I stopped selling it because I was just so uncomfortable with what the levels were of the things that we'd had tested. And you have no idea which pieces are safe and which ones are not, because testing is not done by the company. Um, I somehow have to get rid of it. The last thing I would like to ask you is, because this is our biggest challenge as people who have all the stuff in our homes. And when I tell you of all the stuff in my home, I
I've
have
heard.
over 100,000 pieces of paparazzi jewelry in my home.
Hmm.
Um, how do we dispose of it safely? What do we do with this stuff?
Well, I have a post about that.
Oh, good. Okay, then I don't want to
No,
waste, like,
no,
yeah.
that's one of the first points on the post is try and return it to the company.
I've already tried. I was refused. Yeah, my request was denied.
Yeah, and so in light of the company not accepting it, I think y'all should hold on to it temporarily until you can see if there are any legal remedies that could benefit you, given this new revelation about the state of California, and also the toxics limits and the false advertising. I know that you were talking to some lawyers. Did you find a lawyer, or where did that
We're
go?
still trying to find somebody that'll take, because a lot of them are happy to talk about like medical causes of action, but like you said, it's so hard to link that together. That, yeah, not yet, but I have recommended to people that at least keep samples of what they have, because a lot of us have repeats of products. But for people who are just like, I just need it the heck out of my house, do you have any suggestion about what to do with it? Like how to safely dispose of it so that you're not just tossing it in your garbage and making an environmental issue out of what was a personal issue?
Yeah, that's see what I so one of the other thing I say on that post is that throwing it in the trash is actually better than not throwing it in the trash, because if you don't throw it in the trash, as a consumer, you're allowed to. This is another gray area in terms of legality. As a consumer, you're allowed to throw stuff in the trash. As a business, if it's toxic, you're not allowed to throw it in the trash.
Oh
So
shit. Okay.
are you a business or are you a consumer? And if you are a business because you are selling this stuff, then it's possible that you can get cited for toxics violations with disposal. So I think, they might think you're crazy if you do this, but it might be the most legal and best way to get rid of it is you take it to the toxic waste disposal site. And I know there was a video about someone who was a paparazzi dealer who did that, but you take it to the toxic waste disposal site and they measure the toxics levels, and then they charge you based on how much lead the samples are that they take of your.
Oh my God, we have to pay to throw it away.
You have to pay to throw it away.
This is the bullshit that just keeps on getting shittier.
Well, and I'm just thinking, I mean, lawsuits can go on forever, but maybe it's worthwhile for some people to pool their money and put together some storage units where you just throw everybody in Kentucky's paparazzi in a storage unit until at least for a year or two until you figure out what goes on and have everybody's labeled. So she said, what kind of containers can we use for the most protective form? So first off, and this is semantics, but so toxins are biological poisons like E. coli. Toxicants are metals. So a toxicant is like arsenic, cadmium, lead, and it's a small distinction, but it's an important.
I wrote the wrong thing in the title of this, so I gotta change it to toxicants. I'll edit it.
So in terms of disposal or containment, I mean, what I do is I just put everything in plastic tubs. Okay. I like the Ziploc ones that have the little foam pressure seal, just so there's not any air movement. That's a good thing. And
so
then
something airtight with a foam seal, so there's no air movement. That's important. Okay.
I think it's like overkill, but I think it's useful. And you could put it all in something as simple as double bagged in Ziploc baggies or something too. But I do think it's probably worthwhile to hold on to this for at least a year or two, just to see what falls out in terms of the legal implications and potentially any refunds you can get if paparazzi is held liable and if they have insurance and if they're made to pay. I mean, that's another thing is like when we sued my contractor who poisoned my kids, his insurance company claimed that his insurance was canceled the day before he started the work on my house. So when like that happens a lot, like people are, oh yeah, we had insurance, but we don't now. So you can't sue our insurance. Well, I hope paparazzi has insurance. Do they? I mean,
so far, I don't know because I don't think anybody's come and tried to claim it against an insurance company, and that's I mean,
that's where the money is. That's where you find out who paparazzi's insurance company is. You ask for a refund because of the toxics and the false advertising, and you submit a claim to paparazzi's insurance for a refund for all of the products you bought. This is all speculation. I'm not a lawyer, but I think that might be an interesting thing to try.
That is an avenue we have not yet tried.
Yeah. Well, you have to know who their insurance company is, so that's a trick.
Well, I guess we can just call all of them and ask till we find out.
Unless that's privileged. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm so sorry that
I am really, really grateful that someone sent this jewelry to you and that you took the time to test it and come on here and talk to us, because I think the worst part about finding out about all of this has been knowing that we helped put garbage out when we were told that it was safe. Like, we just all feel as consumers betrayed, but also absolutely worried about the part that we played. And just having real steps to take, real things to consider, real suggestions about what to do with it, it's invaluable, because we are not, you may consider yourself to be a citizen scientist, but we're absolute amateurs at any of this, and that was not what we signed up to be. We signed up to sell nickel and lead-free jewelry for $5 that all of our friends and relatives would love because it's reasonably priced and fashion forward.
Yeah.
No. And that's not what it's ended up being. And so many of us are emotionally devastated, financially devastated. It's $500,000, dollars later. So
yeah, and I get, it's not an easy challenge, and the answers are not yet clear, right? And one thing I'm just looking at also my homepage of my website, and I just look at this, the Graco mattress that's up there, and
Yeah.
it's a Graco premium foam crib and toddler mattress, Green Guard Gold and CertiPure US certified as non-toxic, and it tests positive for 1,185 parts per million antimony. That's the thing. Is the other thing is, which hill are you going to die on? Do you want
Right.
to fight paparazzi? Do you want to make sure your baby bottles are lead free? Do you want to let your kids sleep on a crib mattress that says it's non-toxic but has the one chemical that's been positively linked to SIDS? I mean, it's a problem with paparazzi, but it's a problem with the United States.
It is. Right.
And and the main thing to learn from this is that we can't trust government agencies to regulate any of this for us. And for me, and I know you said we were wrapping up, and then I'm like babbling again.
I feel bad for taking up all your time because I know you are still trying to put up your blog tonight. And I can't thank you enough for coming on to talk to us in person because so many of us are just on the edge of our seats. But I know you have other work to do. And I could talk to you for hours.
Well, let's keep talking for a little bit more. But
Okay.
so two things. One is I wanted to go back on my credentials in terms of the work that I do, and I often I'm hired by public health departments. The state of New Hampshire's hired me. I worked with the state of Wisconsin. I worked with the state of Vermont, the city of Burlington. I worked in New Orleans, where I'm hired by health departments or public agencies to give talks on this subject, and even to the point where doctors and nurses and childcare providers and contractors who are certified for lead removal, they are getting CEUs, continuing education credits, for coming to hear me speak. So that when you put my work in that context, like this is a class, you and me right here, we're having a one-on-one class.
Well, I feel like we are.
Yeah,
Really. Honestly.
And so that's one layer of context I wanted to give for people. And again, everything I say, I try and base in science in a really solid way. And then the other thing I wanted to say is a little bit more personal, in that I was lucky in a really weird way, in that when we moved to Oregon, my house burned down and we lost everything in a house fire. And this was incredibly traumatic, if you can imagine. And
Right.
but we all survived because we happened to not be home. And I had just had a new baby. I was visiting my family in California, and I developed this new context for stuff, and I lost, everything I had collected.
Yeah.
In my whole life. And I did off-Broadway costume design when I was in college, and I made costumes. I had all these vintage costumes of vintage hats. I had like probably 60 vintage hats and vintage ball gowns and vintage jewelry, and it all got destroyed in the fire. And I never recollected any of that. And then my kids were poisoned a few years later, and then I'm like, okay, I never want to recollect any of that. So
Right.
I have very few possessions, and I live in a very simple way. And I encourage you, whoever you are, to try that on in whatever way is comfortable for you. Like, what can you do to simplify your life? Because if you're living like your grandmother, your great grandmother, your great great grandmother, hopefully you won't have these problems as much. You'll get the plain glass baby bottle instead of the baby bottle with the pretty modern decorations. You'll get some nice sterling silver jewelry and some cast iron pots and pans. It won't be all decorative and embellished and so 2022. And if you can just choose a few areas, like I tell people to start with their kitchen. And because this is a jewelry audience, you probably want to start with your jewelry as well. But for me, that means only sterling silver jewelry, because gold often has mercury because of mountaintop mining, and recycled gold can have mercury and arsenic, and gold is bad. But silver,
Holy shit! Nobody knew that.
it's on my blog.
I have so much left to read because it's a really big blog, baby.
It's got like I said, 3,100 posts and pages, and people are like, can you make it more searchable? And I do all the things to make it more searchable. But when you've got a veritable database and encyclopedia of test results from everything from, like I said, from vintage vibrators to your mother's dishes to like the thing that's been crazy is like the Always pan and the Caraway pan and the Green Life pan, all these non-toxic pots and pans that have all the metals in them. It just you don't need any of that stuff. It's all bad. Anything mass manufactured is going to be fairly toxic in most cases. So think about, like, especially so I was saying, start with your kitchen, and if you want to start with your jewelry, but start with your kitchen. With your so for jewelry, stainless steel is good, titanium is good, and silver. And then for your kitchen, you don't want to have painted or decorated or highly colorful plates. You don't want to have anything vintage. Clear glass, stainless steel without decorations, and cast iron without decorations, and rotate out your cooking stuff so you're not always cooking on one thing, so you don't have to worry about the toxicants in cast iron or the toxicants in stainless steel. You're never using one pan all the time. I use clear glass as much as I can. Like, I got those big Pyrex, they're like brownie sheets things, they have egg.
Oh, I remember all that. Yeah.
But I use those for everything. I use those for cooking asparagus or potatoes. I just use them for everything because they're clear glass. And I'll sometimes use my cast iron or my stainless steel. And so then once you look at your kitchen, and I have lots of advice for that on my website, then also look at your kid's bedroom, wherever the room is that your kid spends the most time. And for me, that is removing synthetic fabrics, removing mass manufactured toys whenever you can. I mean, actually, a lot of the new plastic toys are really safe.
Good. That's good to hear.
Yeah, but the vintage plastic toys are really toxic with lead and cadmium and mercury, and that's the Fisher Price and the Polly Pockets and all this other stuff. The toys you and I had as a kid.
Yeah, that's probably what's wrong with me.
So it's like, make your kids' space safe. And for me also, the most important thing is make their bed safe, and make their blankets safe. Natural materials whenever possible. Wool, cotton. I like down. People who are vegan don't like down, but I like down. I have a down comforter with a cotton cover, and because then you're not having polyfill, and you're not having synthetic fibers up against your naked body, which is a bad thing. And what I'm finding in a lot of bedding is high levels of antimony, like that one mattress. So the antimony is going to be, antimony was replaced lead. When they outlawed lead as fire retardant, for example, they didn't really outlaw it, but when they stopped using lead as a fire retardant on Christmas lights, for example, they replaced it with antimony because it has the same principle, chemical properties in terms of fire retardancy. So, and when you buy lead-free pewter, oh, that sounds great. It's pewter, but it's lead-free. No, it has antimony, and antimony causes cancer. So it has 200, 300,000 parts per million antimony. So they've used antimony to replace lead in a lot of things. And so it's really saturated our supply chain. So it's in the polyfill of your kids' dolls. It's in the polyfill of their jackets. It's in the polyfill of their blankets. So I recommend if you have little babies, don't let them have any dolls in their bed. The dolls should go on a shelf to look at, and they should not be the snuggly, suck-on, hug dolls. If they have a stuffy that they hug and hold and interact with on a daily basis, make sure it's organic cotton on the outside and organic cotton on the inside. A lot of the organic cotton brands, they still fill with polyfill. So you want to make sure it's as natural as possible if your kiddo's interacting with it. Anyway, and so those simplify your life, focus on your kitchen, maybe your jewelry, personal care products, and your baby's bedroom.
That is awesome, and that's doable. Like, those are places to start, so it's not totally overwhelming your whole life.
Yeah. And I have another website. It's not really great, but it's there. It's shopleadsafemama.com, and it's like no stories, just stuff to buy that's lead free. So it's
but see, that's if you're gonna go someplace and you're like, well, where do I get dishes that aren't full of poisonous shit? So that's a good place to start.
But also Target has good things. Target has a really good toxics policy, especially their costume jewelry. It's not nearly as
I actually love to hear that because I love me some Target.
Yeah. And I don't buy ceramics there, but they have good, their glassware is generally lead free and cadmium free and antimony free, except for the Rydell non-lead crystal goblets and things like that. Those are really high antimony. And then and the jewelry and the clothing. And Target has a really good toxic policy. Walmart also, if you're buying glassware, is generally good from a toxics perspective. I just avoid buying ceramics at those places.
Okay, well that's valid because I mean some of the stuff you would buy I drink a lot of coffee, a lot of tea, and you
Yeah,
know that I'm buying all those mugs that are cutesy and they're ceramic, and you know they're full of crap now.
yeah, I use clear glass mugs most of the time. And it's boring a little bit, but I also say, how would your great grandmother have decorated her table? Not with the dishes. She would have done it with the food. The food be your centerpiece, or bring in
Yep,
some fresh flowers. You don't need to have all this highly toxic stuff in your home. And so bringing it back to paparazzi, it's just very frustrating that this whole situation with paparazzi is just one little piece of a big problem.
it is.
Of my
Annabelle
shop,
asked if you could repeat your website.
it's shopledsafemama.com.
So
And
shopledsafemama.com. So
yeah,
that's easy enough.
yeah, and I did that. It has no ads on it. It just has links to stuff. And I don't mind if you don't buy what I recommend, but note that Amazon's expensive and it links to stuff on Amazon in a lot of cases. So you can find the products that I like and then buy them at Target and they'll be cheaper.
Right
Like there's a
on.
pie plate might be $10 on Amazon, but $5 at Target because it doesn't have to include the free shipping and like some of the larger, heavier glass things. Thank you for putting that. And then I just also want to say that the way I make a living is from people reading what I write. And that's why I have it out there for free and not behind a paywall. I want as many people to read it as possible, and I get about 1 penny per page view. So
Oh,
anything
yeah.
you
So please go and read as much as you can on tamarubin.com.
LetSafeMama.com, TamaraRubin.com. It's the same site. Yeah,
Yeah. So
TamaraRubin.com.
so Danny was saying that he likes mason jars because they look cooler, but now no, they look cooler. You're
They are
super
cool.
safe.
Yeah, yeah. I have we have lots of mason jars. There are, so the ball jars tend to test positive for trace lead less frequently than the care jars, but they're the same company now. So, and they test positive if they are positive for like 30 to 45 parts per million lead, which is safe when it's bound in glass. It's not considered a
Okay.
problem. So, not all clear glass is lead free, but a lot of the modern clear glass is, and the bulb jars are a really good choice and
Okay,
inexpensive.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, we could go on forever. Any last paparazzi questions?
Did anybody have, if you get your chance, y'all, you gotta last, I tried to put up all the like jewelry related questions. A lot of times they were repeated, like, well, how do we store it? Should we get rid of it? It's been the biggest question I get is, okay, well, it's crap. Now, how do I get rid of it? And I'm like, well, don't throw it away.
Yeah,
Now, like, don't throw it away because you're a business and you're liable. Like, shit.
yeah. You have to pay to have it disposed of at the toxic site of your dump wherever you live. Um,
Yeah.
and, and usually that's by the ton. Like that's generally reserved for like construction debris when they dismantle
Okay.
a house. So it should be not too expensive, because they do it by the truckload. And that's again, you could get together with a bunch of other local paparazzi people and throw it out all together and split the
Oh my
cost
God,
of
we
it.
should have disposal parties.
Yes.
It's just adding insult to injury that you paid for it. Now you got to pay to throw it away. That's just adding insult to injury. Like, how dare you?
Well, and then the thing is, are you paying for holding on to it? Like I have a storage unit. I'm just pulling out. I can't see anything. I'm just seeing what I wanted to show you some more of these earrings, but I guess I'll just post them all on the website. I'm trying to see if this has any enamel. I
Yeah,
guess
girl, make them go look at your website.
this is a paintbrush. I think I can't
Oh, a
tell.
paintbrush.
Is
Okay.
that what it is? I don't
I
know.
don't know. I couldn't tell.
Oh, you also get you had a name for those little flowers. I think it's funny that they all have names. How do they keep track of all the names?
They use them over a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. They'll be like 65. No, I shouldn't say 65. That's an exaggeration. But there'll be like 3 different versions of Snowflake Magnificence or something. Yeah. And you'll be like, that's not the right. What? Yeah. Here it comes again.
Well,
Because there's only so many cute names.
if you go to my website and you see a paparazzi jewelry and there's a name for it and I don't have it listed, please comment with the name of the jewelry. So
A lot of the kids' jewelry did not have names. It would just say Starlit Shimmer pack number 5 or something. It didn't act. A lot of them didn't have names. But yeah.
All right. So the end advice is, yeah, I think hold on to it for a little bit if you can, out of the way, somewhere where kids won't get to it, where it won't get damaged, so you can use both the packaging and the false advertising, all in court if you have to, if you have the opportunity. I think we'll probably know. I don't know who's handling any of this, but whoever's doing these inquiries will have answers about whether or not there's going to be a big lawsuit. Probably it takes a year or two to figure out if there's a potential for a lawsuit,
Yeah.
and then you'll know. And if there's no lawsuit and paparazzi goes out of business, then just dispose of it.
Yeah.
But if there is a lawsuit, I think, let's try and get you some restitution from their insurance company in the form of refunds.
Shit. No
Yeah.
one has ever mentioned the insurance companies to us before, so thanks for bringing that up. Seriously, like somebody
Yeah.
will be on it. I can guarantee by the morning somebody will be making phone calls because we got a really motivated group of people. Yeah.
Are they based in Canada?
No, they're based in Utah. They're
Um,
incorporated in Florida, but they're based out of Utah, like most multi-level marketing companies in America.
so I'm just thinking you could call the Florida government, or I don't know who would know whether or not they were insured or had appropriate business insurance. I know not all businesses have insurance, so.
That's an interesting perspective because somebody at the Florida at the state of Utah where they have their actual facility, I'm sure they're required to have certain types of insurance and they probably have to list their policies like everybody else does.
So if they have to put like their workers' comp insurance into the public record, the company that carries those insurances for them might carry their liability insurance as well.
Oh, this is see, yeah.
Yeah,
Because
I
they
don't
probably
know.
get that multi-policy discount. They probably bundled to save. Like that's all working in our favor. Thank you, Flo from Progressive.
Oh shit. Oh, so and then in the meantime, if you're gonna do me a favor, share about the lidded baby bottles. I did.
Yeah, please, you guys. If I know paparazzi stuff is the main focus for tonight, but y'all, the baby bottle thing that breaks my heart. You can't hand lead paint to a baby. It's the most damaging time in their lives to be exposed to lead. Am I wrong?
No, yeah,
Like,
that's right.
yeah.
And just for context too, when NUC was contacted about this issue, they said that this bottle was not supposed to be purchased in America. And I'm like, well, it was purchased by a mom in Tennessee off of Amazon and sent to a mom, me, in Oregon. So I don't care what you think it's legally supposed to be, but if you think you're only selling these in Germany and Croatia and Greece, you're mistaken. And so these were sent to me by a vendor from Croatia, I think. And so, but they were, obviously sent to America. And NUC's response is, well, that's not our legal bottles for America, so we're not breaking the law.
Well, you're still a giant asshole for poisoning Croatian babies, you
Yeah, exactly.
jackasses.
So what I did was I had my girlfriend. Wait, I'm going to get one last time. Well, I can tell you. So I had my girlfriend in New Zealand order a baby bottle from NUC sent to New Zealand, and I'm going to get a couple different other countries where I have friends ordering a bottle. So then I'm going to approach the United Nations and the World Health Organization and let them know that NUC is selling lead painted baby bottles in all of these different countries, and then hopefully we'll get some traction, because we're not going to get traction here because this is the United States of opportunity. And we focus on corporate benefit. That's we have to vote differently if we want to change this.
And there's just so many reasons why. So many reasons why and no reasons not to. But get a corporate lobbyist group to let this go through, because I'm sure NUC is pending has a lot of checks going out to people who decided that Croatian babies were less important than American babies, but
Right.
It's so gross.
It is. Yeah.
Danny said maybe Croatian babies are tougher. Maybe they are, but they
yeah.
still shouldn't have to fight that battle.
It's crazy.
I've been to Croatia. The babies there seem tough. I don't know.
Well,
I mean, I had my oldest daughter with us, and she was like, I think she was like 10 months old. We didn't really have any baby throwdowns, but the other babies, they gave her the side eye, and she just kind of looked away. So they were sort of intimidating, those Croatian babies. Yeah.
I've never been, but it's frustrating that this is allowed to happen in other countries as well, and it's I don't know. I mean, this is a down. I don't know what. It's just
It's a human issue. It's not an American issue. It's a human issue, and you're that the United Nations, the World Health Organization. I hope that they do take it, to the next level and just outlaw. Ugh. Why
yeah.
can't they just sell baby bottles that are glass? Why do they have to have paint on them?
Well, and the other thing is Avent. I have an Avent bottle here. The Avent ones have painted designs. They're lead free. It's not like it's it's not like it's impossible to use lead free paint, but NUC uses leaded paint. And so it's really like, you know, it's just I guess it's frustrating and depressing, and it's so pervasive. And yet there are lead free options to everything. So you can get an Avent bottle instead of a NUC bottle, and how easy is that? But and you can get lead free, sterling silver jewelry instead of paparazzi. And sterling silver is cheap. It really is not expensive. It's not as cheap as paparazzi, but it's
But it also doesn't break on its way to you in the mail like that little ring a ding you had there that you're like, I think this came on a ring, but since it's separated. Yeah, that happened a lot to us as consultants. In fact, we should all probably have seen this coming, since when you get your kit, you get a repair kit with it. A kit of tools and parts so you can repair the broken jewelry that comes to you, because they're not going to refund it if you can fix it yourself.
yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, we're all in charge of fixing their shit when it comes to the house before we even get to sell it to anybody.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know, what else to do except, keep encouraging people to find other avenues to make a living. All the moms that did this and dads who did this, there's other opportunities out there. I think, what you all are doing is, great, is writing, and I guess blogging and sharing about it this way. And anything that you can do to monetize that is wonderful too. It's hard to monetize advocacy work.
it is.
Um,
It's almost impossible.
yeah, yeah, it takes a long time. And I mean, Savannah Marie is doing a great job, right?
Yep, she's awesome. And she's done a ton to try to bring paparazzi's corporate negligence to light, because, the greater community has to be interested or nothing's going to happen. Because just consultants, we get told, well, you're just angry because you're an ex-consultant, and you're just mad because you got fired and you don't work here anymore. I'm like, mad about a lot of things. Never said I wasn't mad. In fact, you also should be mad. Why aren't you?
Yeah,
Why aren't you angry that you're suddenly completely exposed legally for selling children's jewelry that you got from your beloved company?
yeah,
Why aren't you mad?
yeah.
So,
and
yeah.
and hopefully people will get mad, and
I hope so.
and I love to see more and more. Like Roberta is great too, and I let
Yep. They're
like
working so hard. They're working so hard. And none of this, we would never have even understood that we had a voice if it wasn't for them and for you. People asked us earlier today, when I first went on early before you could join us, to say, oh my gosh, these new test results are out. They said, what made you test the jewelry? I said, well, my daughter was having a reaction to some of the jewelry, but we just thought that was a fluke. But then when we hit our recovering paparazzi consultants group, when we got this group together of ex consultants, a lot of people started telling stories about it. And then we found your article from two
yeah,
years ago, and we're like, we're getting this jewelry tested. So we tried to test it ourselves, and it was not the right way to do it. But what it did do was move us to the next step, which was then to get other testing done in a lab. Like, we wouldn't have done that without your article and getting together as a group and saying, is everybody sick? Like, does everybody's neck itch? Like, is your finger green? Like, what's going on? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. I think, banding together and supporting each other. And I also think, try and take a breath and try and ground everything in science and everything in what's legal or not legal. Because if you start saying, well, okay, we're all sick, that's not defensible with science, right?
Right.
So try and focus on the little tiny tidbits that are fully scientifically defensible or fully legal.
Yes.
As a lawyer, you don't hang like my civil rights case is based on the fact that they knew I was innocent, yet the guy testified before the grand jury and said I was guilty, even though the IRS had already shown that I was innocent with an audit. So it's like, just like little tiny facts that are really important, and And in this case, the facts are the label on the package and the state of California law and the false advertising. Those are the best facts you have
And
going for.
those tiny, seemingly unimportant little tidbits are going to be what gets us all our justice, I believe. I
Yes.
believe.
Yeah, I think that's really profound. So the other thing, I'm sure you've all done scrapings of their website with all the propaganda and fake and the lies and everything. I don't.
So much. So many. So
Yeah,
many. Like, people are working really hard. Like, there's hundreds of people working on this. It's certainly not just me. Yeah.
yeah. So you got all the documentation and, I think that also if you do collect the vast quantities of jewelry that you want to dispose of in one place, that could be a really good visual for a news story. When you like approach your local Kentucky news or whatever, get all the Kentucky paparazzi people near you, put it all in one storage unit, and take pictures of all the piles and mounds of
I wonder
stuff.
if we could like get a storage unit and we could just tell people, even if you can't drive it here and drop it off, mail it. We'll just throw it all in there until we can get
Yeah, they should put
the
their name.
mountain of trash.
Yeah, I mean, that costs money too. Everything costs money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to decide what you're willing to continue to throw at this.
Well, our fundraising efforts got derailed because too many people, yeah, challenged all of the ideas we had about how to spend it. So we just returned it all. So,
Yes.
um, we have nothing right now monetarily, but we have a lot of people with a lot of ideas, and hopefully we'll come up with something eventually that can, because not something like you said, your gun, everything costs money. Like, you can't really be an advocate on a $0 budget, not an effective advocate. But we're gonna figure it out. We've only been in existence as Recovering Paparazzi Consultants Group, Crack the Crown. We've only been in existence since September, so we're not doing too bad for a 6 month old group. But
Are you incorporating as a nonprofit?
we incorporated as a not for profit,
Yeah.
not as a community organization. We did not do the nonprofit because it was a whole lot more paperwork and like an 18-month wait. So we organized as a community organization, not for profit, right? So we can do some fundraising in this. Um, we're hoping to get some ideas together for that. We have nobody agrees on that either, right? Everybody's always like, there's always the group of people like, we don't want any of that. I'm like, okay, great. How are we supposed to pay for this testing? Because I'm pretty sure that my days stripping on the pole are over. I mean, nobody wants to see this for dollar bills. Just
Oh,
saying.
hey, you might be surprised though. I mean, look at Lizzo. She's great, right?
I love Lizzo, but she's also not 51. And having given birth to 3 children and attempted to breastfeed them, things do not hang the way they used to.
I thought this is so funny because I thought I'm so like I'll do anything to get attention on this issue. And so I went to a bikini store in Los Angeles and tried on some bikinis, and I bought a bikini because I like if I dress in a bikini and have baby bottles in my hand, maybe somebody will pay attention. I thought, how much cleavage can I show? So these bikinis wouldn't even stay on. I don't know how.
I'm going to say, listen, I'm going to walk around in a thong and some pasties until somebody pays attention. And if you are disgusted by this visual, I will put a robe on as soon as you listen to what I have to say. And until then, I'm holding you all visually hostage with this hot mess.
Yeah, that might happen on my end. uh, so we'll keep an eye out for that. I think that anything we can do to bring attention to the issues is good. Oh, I had an idea. So I used to be a fundraising consultant. So basically, what I used to do was I couldn't make a living as a clown, so I got a job in site specific performance art theater in San Francisco, and I had a job where I acted and I was in this play for 3 months long. It sold out. We had to extend our run. We got rave reviews in the San Francisco Chronicle, and I got $300 for 3 months work. And my husband, my ex-husband at the time, said, "You can't do that anymore." I'm like, I should have told him to fuck off then, but that was what my background was. So because my ex-husband said you can't do that anymore, I said, well, how can I make a living and work in the theater? So I started doing fundraising for nonprofits and database design for nonprofits and working for theater companies. And then I went to get my master's in nonprofit administration from the University of San Francisco. But in the middle of all that, I got married and divorced and had a miscarriage. And then I got pregnant and had a baby on my own, and I had cervical cancer, and so I never finished my graduate thesis. So I have done all of my work for a master's in nonprofit administration, but never finished my graduate thesis. And so then I decided to, be a consultant for nonprofits, which is what I did for about a decade in Marin County. And I did fundraising campaigns, and I would help nonprofits come up with ideas. So that's like a big part of my background. And then I started doing the database design and working with Apple, and I did database design for nonprofits. But then there were board members of these nonprofits that worked for hospitals, so I started doing database design for hospitals. So I upgraded Kaiser Permanente Hospital's Y2K compatibility database to
I
determine.
remember Y2K and the nightmare that was that. I worked for an accounting firm at the time.
Yeah.
So I remember the whole disaster that everybody was getting. Yeah, anyway, I remember Y2K.
Yeah, so I helped upgrade the database that was supposed to determine what medical equipment in the Kaiser Permanente system was going to fail with the Y2K bug. So that's how I ended up doing all this. But so I do consulting for nonprofits. Anyway, so one thing I was thinking is that if you want to fundraise, what you need to do is find a foundation that empowers women, whose work is about hiring women back to the workplace when they have children, keeping women employed, making women have sustainable lives where they can pay their own costs. There are lots of foundations, granting agencies that do that sort of thing. I think even the Gates Foundation has a priority of empowering women. And I think that if you can find the right program and connect with the program administrators there, they might be able to help you come up with something as a safety net. And I see that question there. So maybe there's somebody out there that wants to give money or already has a program empowering women, and that can basically catch all of you and help you.
Oh my God, that's a great idea. We can look for people that help with what we're our mission.
Yeah.
That are available. Okay, that is an excellent idea.
And I know. So just look for granting foundations that's focused on mothers and women and returning women to the workplace. I think that's
okay.
So no, each state does not have its own version of Prop 65.
Yeah, I was afraid that was the answer. Yeah.
But some states do. I mean, Vermont is really progressive. Different states have really progressive. Washington State is the best state. Washington State is even better than California because they're better at enforcing things. So Washington and California, hopefully, when you can find someone who's broken the law in Washington, which I believe they also have broken the law in Washington, then you can hopefully set a precedent by whatever actions are taken in the state of Washington and the state of California in terms of actions against the company. I think you could probably Becca might be the one. Do you know Becca? Becca Peter? She was in the Lula Rich documentary.
You know what? Roberta told me she knows her, but I have not spoken to her yet.
She and I have known each other for years, and she is in Washington State, and I think that she might be a good person to tap to see what Washington State might want to do about this.
Awesome.
Or call the Department of Environment for Washington State and see, hey, we've got this issue. Can you help us?
Actually, one of the women who's really working really hard and on the front lines of doing this is a lady named Carly Copeland, and she lives in Washington. She's in our group. She actually just did, she herself paid for a round of some dissolution, or what do they call testing?
Digestive testing.
Digestive. I say the wrong word all the time. You think digestive would be easier to remember. She just paid for a round of that at this lab ATS that is approved by the Consumer Product Safety Commission. So yeah, so I bet she would be a good person to hook up with that Becca lady because they're together in the same space.
Becca didn't sell paparazzi, but she's very much about making people accountable for this kind of stuff. So
yes, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so the more people can get involved, the better. In different states. Obviously, Oregon's the worst. Like, Oregon sucks. There's no consumer protections here. So,
well, I don't think Kentucky is raising major flags at a parade for it either. But
if there's any paparazzi dealers in Vermont, they might want to talk to the Vermont legislature or whoever their local representatives are. Also, Rhode Island might be a good place to approach this because Rhode Island has some pretty good toxic legislation. Mostly it's around homes, and I haven't heard that they have specific stuff about consumer goods, but they might be interested in this because they're pretty progressive in Rhode Island as well.
Okay.
And now we're on like 2 hours here.
You know what? But how much value was in this 2 hours? Like, this has been a crash course in consumer advocacy, specific information about the health concerns of the toxicants that are included in the products that you've tested, what we can do with the stuff we have, how to save it, whether we should save it, who we need to talk to, how we can raise money. Like, I feel like I just went to college. I just went to Let's Safe Mama School.
Yeah, I need to start an online class.
I'm telling you, you can do it on Kajabi, and you can make a little money that way for your work. I'm not kidding.
There's so many things. I want to do a TV show. That's what I want to do.
I would love that because you are so personable and you have so much information, and people need to hear this. People would really love that. I know it. If nothing else, do a YouTube channel like this.
I have a little YouTube channel. It's like when it's all lead all the time, it's not the same. I'm like, it's not as exciting. I did interview John Fishman, drummer of the band Fish, who was the father of a family that I helped, and so there's an interview on my homepage and on my
Very
YouTube
cool.
channel. Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool interview. And then I don't know, you're the right age. You know who Ed Begley Jr. is?
Yeah.
So Ed and his wife have agreed to do an interview with me. So I'm friendly with them because they're in the environmental community. So I'm going to do an interview with them soon, hopefully. And I think he's working on a film that he's just wrapping up. So then, I'm going to just try and do some interviews with other prominent environmentalists and see where that takes us. I just recently met with Gwyneth Paltrow's doctor. And he sent a video of me testing something to Gwynny. So I don't know if that's going to turn into anything.
Okay, but I mean, you know all the right people. They just gotta turn their heads to listen to this. They gotta be focused on this for a second, right? You could be like the electric cars of, like that was the thing. When did electric vehicles become popular in America? When everybody in Hollywood decided they would get an electric car.
Yeah, and that was Ed Begley Jr. Yeah, and I think that there's opportunity here, but I'm more about. I don't want to sell stuff. Everyone wants me to make a Lead Safe Mama line of products, and that's not kind of my jam really right now.
Well, if you could just put your seal of approval on stuff like the Good Housekeeping seal. I mean, that's what your website is.
Yeah.
Right.
I stopped short of giving my seal of approval, although I just did start a blog post series, Tamara's favorite things, like Oprah's favorite things.
I saw that, yeah.
But they're just random little things because I don't, like I said, I don't.
Those random little things can make a difference in your everyday life. I mean, that adds value. It honestly does. Well, yeah. I feel like we have hogged you enough tonight.
Okay.
I cannot thank you enough for coming on the night all the news broke and talking to us. Like, that is such a huge gift you gave all of us tonight. Thank you very, very much for being with us. And everybody, please go to TamaraRubin.com and check out the post. She's going to be posting more over the next couple of days. So if you're watching this on the replay, there'll probably be way more up on the website than there is even now. But right now, there's 6 separate pieces in their findings. Let's keep getting as much information out there as we can so we can make paparazzi held accountable for what they have put out into the world. So, yeah.
I just want to say one thing. Under the Participate tab in the menu of my website, it says subscribe to the blog. If you subscribe to my email list, that's the best way to get the latest on my what I publish.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so you guys go to the website, subscribe to the blog. That's how I found out about this tonight. And big shout out to Courtney, the MLM police. She is who sent me the link to the Reddit. And Tamara and I are going to be on the live chat on Sunday doing the Reddit question and answer. So that's going to be fantastic. So everybody please go and join that Reddit group.
Yeah.
Is it a group?
It's a group, I think. It's Lead Safe Mamas. I think it's called a group.
Yeah. So it's like a subreddit. Like, we got fancy terms.
Yeah.
We're old dogs, but we're learning new tricks. We got this. All right. Well, Tamara, I cannot thank you enough. I really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
I will look forward to talking with you on Sunday. And again, thank you from the bottom of my cold, dead heart for putting all this paparazzi jewelry through its paces. We
yeah,
cannot thank you enough.
yeah. Thank you for airing all of this. It's really important.
Yes. All right, y'all. Unless something exciting happens between now and then, I guess we'll see you next Tuesday for tea time. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.